this segment off, let's talk about the first systems of farm management, which was very popular at this time. The first system was direct work by owner and his family.
The second system was tenant farming or sharecropping. This was where the owner of the plantation and the tenant divided up the farm's produce.
Another system was forced labor of slaves. They were owned by aristocrats and supervised by slave managers.
The last system was a farm lease to a tenant.
Indirect Access reporter Olivia Nye has joined us live in Rome, Italy, where archaeologist Carla Rines.
And thank you, Skylar. I'm here with Carla Reyes, an archaeologist from UCL, the University of London. She studied excessively on the subject of ancient Rome plantations and farmings. Would you like to explain, Carla?
Yes. We have seen so much evidence of Rome plantations, like samples of seeds and stalks we have been able to recover because of the wet and arid conditions we have here. Also, in other areas, the volcanic ash that was caused by the hot and dry conditions of Pompeii in 79 AD has caused the survival of remarkable remains of fruits, berries, beans, and seeds.
That's amazing. You've managed to recover so much information from thousands of years ago.
We've been working hard for 7 years and have finally managed to gain such important evidence.
Thank you so much, Carla, and back to the studio.
Thanks, Olivia. Wow, that's amazing that they're able to.
Oh my gosh, this just in. Our producers are picking up another wormhole right outside of the studio, and it leads to ancient Rome.
Let's get the inside extra on Roman plantations, owner of slaves.
Yeah, I mean, we have all the information here, but I guess it would be better for the story to have some first-hand information.
We have Olivia already on the scene, and she has met up with some eyewitnesses.
Let's tune in.
Hi, I'm here with Sophia Milano, the wife of a farm owner. How are you doing today, Sophia?
I'm fine, thanks for asking.
Would you like to tell me about owning a farm?
Well, when I think about the benefits of owning a farm over a latifundia, only one thing comes to mind, and that's the fact that you can make a living close to home.
Would you like to tell me about the disadvantages of owning a local farm?
Well, there are huge problems with it. For starts, we cannot produce the grain as cheaply as they can in latifundia because we don't have any slave labor. Also, they are able to produce the crops more efficiently than we can, so they make more of it, which drives down the price of the crops, putting us into debt.
That sounds terrible.
Oh, it is.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Sophie. And back to the studio.
Seems like the local farm owners are in for some trouble up against these latifundia.
I agree. It looks like the latifundias are taking over and leaving the local farmers in the dust.
Why don't we explain more about the latifundia in order to pave the way for our next interview?
Alright, well, latifundias were huge farming estates or plantations that grew most of the food in Rome at the time. Latifundias meant the running of Rome, and most of the workers on these plantations were done by slaves.
Well, it seems like Olivia has met up with an owner of the latifundia who can explain the rest.
Hi, I'm here with Bella Gallo, the wife of the plantation owner. Hello, Bella.
Ciao.
So, Bella, can you tell us on your background on slavery?
Well, some of them are Romans whose parents had to take them to pay off debt, sell them actually. But most of them were brought here when Roman took over the Mediterranean. Oh, and some of them were prisoners who were captured during the war.
Can you tell me how someone can become a slave?
Oh yes, my husband and I are always in the market for slaves since there's always room for more work. The 3 ways that people can acquire a slave could be through the most common way, a slave auction, where you buy a slave, through a conquest of warfare, when someone on the opposing side is captured and taken prisoner, or through birth, when one of your slaves has a child.
You said you're always on the market for slaves. How much do slaves cost?
Well, when you're rich like me, the average slave is not as expensive at all. But if you're looking for someone who has a special talent, skill, or beauty, then they are more expensive. For example, a couple of weeks ago, one of my close friends was looking for a slave who was trained in medicine, and it ended up costing her 50 times the amount that it would have paid for an agricultural slave.
And finally, could you tell me some of the downsides of being on a latifundia, opposed to a small local farm?
The only thing that really comes to mind as a downside of owning a huge plantation with lots of money, as this one, would be the slave revolts that seem to happen quite often.
Thank you. you, Bella, for giving us the scoop on the views of a latifundio owner.
No problem. Thank you for asking me. I think there's more people you should ask about my views on things.
All right, well, thank you. From ancient Rome, back to the studio.
For such an interesting interview.
Yes, interesting is definitely one way to describe it.
While Olivia is looking for another witness, why don't we give everyone some more information on slave rights?
Okay,
then. Well, to start off, slaves had no rights and were considered property.
Yes, and because they were property, they were subject to their owner's impulse. So if a master were to kill one of the slaves for no reason whatsoever, there would be no punishment.
Wow, that's truly terrible. But on the flip side, if a slave were to kill their master, then all of the other slaves in the household would be killed as punishment.
Slaves could also be sold or rented out at any time, and they would work for no money.
There is one thing that they were allowed to do, though, which was stand as a witness in a courtroom.
Speaking of slaves' rights, Olivia has the inside scoop, and she is live in ancient Rome right now, speaking with a slave.
2 slaves from the plantation. Good afternoon. How are you guys doing?
Good afternoon. To you too.
Nina, how are you doing?
Not good.
I'm sorry to hear that. It must be terrible the way they treat you on the plantations.
It is. They whip us daily.
We are often whipped, branded, and cruelly mistreated.
I have a branding mark on my leg that I got when I first came here.
I'm sorry, that's so awful.
I know, and I wish there was something that we could do to stop it. But the last time that there was a revolt, all the slaves were killed, and I just can't risk that.
I'm sorry, how are slaves ever set free? Set free?
There are 2 ways that slaves can be set free, formally and informally. The ways the slaves can be set free formally is by saving up money and buying our freedom, or our masters could set us free officially. If a slave is set free formally, then we can become full Roman citizens, although we cannot run for office. If us slaves are freed unofficially, then they cannot become Roman citizens, and the property or the wealth has to go back to our masters once they die.
Interesting. I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
All right. How did you 2 become slaves?
Well,
My father
Our
owned a
farm.
small farm a little
north.
north of Rome, and when these big
La Funda.
started producing more and more crops, it lowered the price of our crops, and it makes it harder for us to pay off our debt.
So, because we couldn't pay our debts, my parents decided that we would have to sell me and my brother into slavery.
Every day, and that is why I want to be freed so badly, because once I can go back home.
I'm so sorry. That's so sad.
You're welcome.
It's tragic.
Thank you. And back to the studio.
I think she's right. That is all the time we have for today.
Really? Well then, Wow's right. Time really has gone by quickly today. And not just because Olivia was time traveling.
Alright, well this has been our special agricultural edition of Indirect Access. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
87 News Team signing out.